So we got some black beans. We're going to take the black beans and we're going to turn this into flour. We're going to make black bean flour. For that I'm using a little coffee grinder. It should be perfect for the job. And here we go. So what you want is a little bit like a grist. So you want a little bit of grist in there, but maybe just a little too much yet. So I'm going to reduce it a little bit more. Okay, that's not bad. So we'll set that aside. So we'll give a little better look at it. This is, it's got a little bit of a grist to it, but also some, like a flour. That's basically what we want. We're going to mix that with buckwheat. So we're going to make the buckwheat flour. We're just going to use plain buckwheat. And we're going to use this old, when I say old, like 40-year-old coffee grinder. Maybe some sponsor will feel sorry for me and send me a new one. Okay. So we put in about a third to a half full, and then we grind it until it gets to about grist quality. So what you don't want it too fine, you want just a little bit of grist left. This feels pretty good. So we're going to be making 2 cups. I already have some started here. That gives us roughly what we need. Notice the different kinds of buckwheat. Sometimes a little bit lighter, sometimes a little bit darker. That's alright. It's all buckwheat. That's all we need. Now, if you're a buckwheat purist out there, you know that all you need is the buckwheat flour, a little bit of salt, water, and that's it. Put it in a fry pan that's hot. Now, this is not pure buckwheat pancakes. So if you're a purist and this bothers you, don't look. Now, what we have here are 2 cups of buckwheat flour, 1 cup of black bean flour. You make the black bean flour the same way you make the buckwheat flour. 1 egg. You always put your egg in a cup separately before you put in the ingredients, because you don't want if you have a rotten egg of some sort, which you don't ever want. I've only had one in 50 years, but if you do, then you don't want it spoiling the rest of your ingredients. So you do it separately. So what we're going to do is we'll put the dry ingredients in first. So all of them are in there. And the black beans. Okay. Add just a little bit of salt, so all your dry ingredients are in. As they say, salt to taste. Your taste will be different from mine. Alright, throw in the egg, just 1. The reason I put in the egg for the buckwheat is just add a little bit of texture to the dough. It's a bit of texture that I enjoy. You don't have to put it in, you can just put in plain water if you want. Now you start adding your wet to dry. So we have 1 cup, we're going to see how many cups it takes to give the texture that we want. As you can see, this is clumping up, which is very so that's 1 full cup. If you add it little by little, it makes it easier to stir. Otherwise you have a lot of extra water kicking around and it can go flying over the edge of the bowl, which we don't want to do. That makes a mess. I don't like cleaning messes. So as you can see, it's starting to smooth out a bit. It needs to be very liquidy when you're done. And you'll see that once it's mixed and you let it stand for a bit, it will actually start to thicken. It's the same with any pancake flour. Sort of reminds you of when you were making meat pies as a kid, doesn't it? Now it's getting toward what we like. So we have basically a proportion of 1 cup of wet for every 1 cup of dry. It's not quite there. That's okay, we can just add it. And this is where it depends on the weather outside, how dry it is. It depends on how finely you did the grist of the wheat, or the buckwheat rather, and of the beans. So there's certain variables. You just have to go with how it looks. You see it here. It's still just a little bit thick, so we're going to add a little bit more. So just part of the 4th cup. And at this point you really have to do it little by little because it will go very liquidy very fast. And then you have to wait for it to thicken. So there's still, as you can see, quite a bit of water left in the cup here, but we're going to use a little bit more of that as time goes on because this is going to thicken on us. Let's get rid of some of this stuck on the fork here. I can see how it flows from the fork. That's basically what you want, more or less like that. So what we've done now is we've preheated the fry pan. How hot should it be? It should be so hot the water dances on it. You saw just a little bit of dancing there, not quite enough. So we're just going to give it a little bit more. Once it reaches temperature, then we're going to turn it down a little bit. Right now I have it on medium-high, and then we're going to turn it to medium-low. And we should not need a separating agent with buckwheat pancakes. Put them on. If the pan is hot enough, they will separate on their own, and everything is cool. However, I like the texture of separating agent, in this case soybean oil or any vegetable oil. And so that's what I'm going to use, a very thin film, just to give it a bit of texture. And you see those dance around? There it goes. Now we're getting to the temperature that we want. Okay, so that is dancing water. If you see it just sort of sizzle in place, then it's not hot enough. So again, I'm just going to put a very thin film of oil on here. Careful not to burn your fingers. Oh, missed a little bit. There we go. Okay, now we can take our fork out. We're done with that. And we'll just give this a little stir around. Now, you see what's happened here? You see how this has gotten thick on us just by standing. So we're just going to add a little bit of water, which means bringing the fork back. Add a little bit of water. And give it a quick stir. Don't worry about the smoking fry pan. Right now we're going to turn it down to medium-low. So we can get that texture back again that we want. Or the viscosity, I guess is the proper term. So we're now getting the proper viscosity. Getting all the water mixed in here. Okay, so what you're going to do is make little pancakes like this. You can make them bigger if you want. But this is the size that I like, because I can use this. I put it in the freezer, those that I don't use right away. Keep your batter away from the heat, because the heat will also thicken your batter. You see the way that's bubbling up here? There's no baking soda in this, there's no baking powder in this. This is just water, bean flour, buckwheat flour. That's it, that's all that's in there. And when you see the top clear, that's when you're ready. And again, the secret is having your pan hot enough. So we'll find out if my pan was hot enough today, or if I was a little too anxious. So you can see the liquid being evaporated here. And it's that liquid, the steam of the liquid, that makes those little holes. You don't need baking soda or baking powder for that. And that's where most people make the mistake. They want light, fluffy buckwheat pancakes. Light, fluffy buckwheat pancakes means that you use just water and buckwheat. A little bit of salt. That's it. Don't need anything else. You see how easily they separate? And the pan is hot enough. Remember, I just turned it back up a little bit. That's the way they should come up, with or without separating agent. Now, there are all kinds of things you can do with these pancakes. You really don't need long on the second side, just a little bit. One thing I particularly like is getting little sausages and wrapping them up with a bit of mustard. That's fantastic. So, this is the final product. We have 48 pancakes. I know this one looks a little bit small, but then I got one down here that was pretty big. So it turns out to be 48 pancakes, all this size. Notice the thickness, that's normal thickness for buckwheat pancakes. Okay, so now what do? I can't eat 48 pancakes. Now, if you're feeding a big family, that's different. So what I do is I take 4 at a time. And I put the 4 in here in this Ziploc bag. So now that gives me 20 pancakes in one Ziploc bag. I stick that in the freezer. There's no worry that these are going to stick together. They will a little bit with the humidity, but just put your thumb in there and they will pop apart. All you need to do once they come out of the freezer is just reheat them a little bit, either in a toaster oven or in a fry pan. Don't try it in a toaster because they're too thin for that. But in a toaster oven or on a fry pan, you can just reheat them and they'll taste just like fresh. And there are your buckwheat black bean pancakes.